All right, my name is Trevor Hutson. I'm the strength and conditioning coach here at Lexington High School. I've been at Lexington for this is my 9th year. And this is the only high school I've worked at. I was at South Carolina for a year in 2013. Went to Gardner-Webb University, got my master's up there. Spent 2.5 years, almost 3 years up there as a strength coach. Assistant director up there and program for a lot of the sports up at Gardner-Webb, and then got the opportunity to come here at Lexington. And I've been the strength coach, football strength coach combo, only strength coach, football strength coach combo, so kind of back and forth. But what I want to talk about today is kind of away from football, but all of the athletes, just training a complete athlete, getting all of our wrestlers, baseball, softball, lacrosse, all of our Olympic sport athletes, well-rounded through strength, power, speed, agility, and endurance. So our overview topics: athletic performance, strength and conditioning foundations, power development, speed and agility, the program that we do here, and endurance training. So similar to Coach Armstrong, we are a block schedule. So we have first, second, third, and fourth block. And with those blocks, our smallest block, we have 65 kids. And then our largest block, we have almost 100. So we have a lot of kids in our weight room here. We have 14 racks. We have a hallway that we use a lot, treadmills that we got this year. So based off of like our program design, we try to create the workflow really well with the amount of kids that we have in here. And then our sport coaches are a lot of our PE coaches. So they'll take the roster for that specific sport. So if it's a boys soccer class, our boys soccer coach will hold that roster for PE. And then they come in the weight room and work with me as we go. And I have a roster for each block as well. I do have a planning period first block, but a lot of that spent in here, kind of helping that group as we go. So the introduction to athletic performance. So developing the complete athlete, the goal is to create a year-long strength and conditioning program. Strength, power, speed, agility, endurance, depending on the sport itself, and the time of the season. So if we're in the off season, our endurance training might look a little different. For football, I title it as endurance, just because we have a lot of general prep phase stuff that we can do during that time. So my goal is just to create the complete athlete all the way around. Just make our kids better athletes, better movers in space, and stronger movers, stronger athletes as they go. So a balanced approach. We're trying to minimize injuries. We can't prevent all injuries, but if we can get our kids stronger, if they learn how to change directions better, if we can strengthen up their joints, muscles around their joints, and get them to develop strength and power, then hopefully that's going to reduce their injuries throughout the year. If somebody straight up just gets clipped and breaks a leg, that's, you can't really prevent that kind of stuff. But any soft tissue things and ligaments, things like that, we want to try to reduce those injuries as much as possible, and enhance our recovery and maximize their performance. And like I mentioned, with our class sizes being so large, and our space is long and narrow, that's kind of changed how I do things or have done things throughout the years. So when I first got here 9 years ago, our class sizes were like 30, and they've just grown exponentially since. So I've had to change kind of how we do things in here. Multi-sport athletes, we have a good handful here at Lexington. But another thing that we have to work around is club seasons, AAUs, things like that, where, basketball may be in season for a very long time. Volleyball just finished up and they're getting ready to start their club stuff. So they almost get no time in the off season.
What do you think is the biggest factor that has went from 30 kids in the class to minimum of 65, well over 100?
I spend a lot. I'm also the PE department head. So I spend a lot of time in our guidance department and working with them. And what I essentially do is I take the roster from the previous year and I get that class set up, and then I take that roster up to our guidance department, and then we work as in. So, for example, like our first block is boys and girls lacrosse, sub varsity football, and wrestling. So I'll take the roster from the previous year up to guidance like January, February. Um, and then we sit down and we say, all right, that first block is going to be our boys and girls lacrosse, our wrestling, and our sub varsity football. Um, and then we work on getting those kids lined up for that one. So then in March-ish time, they give me kind of this rough draft of, hey, this is what the class is going to look like. Are these kids the ones that we want? And then I give them a thumbs up or thumbs down, kind of like you do, and we go from there. And then constantly just talking to the coaches about, you know, some of the coaches want to practice during that time frame. When I try to spin it to them as more of a year-long performance development. So we tried it when I first got here. It was just their varsity kids were coming in. So now we get varsity, we get JV, we get B team. But it's just a constant communication with guidance and getting them to do it. So I know yours is set up a little different with male and female. I did have a female only class one year, and we had like 75, 80 girls in here, and it was a lot. And that was probably our best like female year in athletics as a whole, just because they pushed each other so well. But I think it's just I'm constantly up there all the time, just talking to them about our long-term development plan for them. And our classes are set up where it's PE 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they progressively take that. So it's PE 3 fall, PE 3 spring, and they take that throughout the time. So they have the ability to work up in that. And then it's easy. I just take that PE 3 fall, and all those kids in PE 3 fall, they should go PE 3 spring, and then they can go 4. So I just take that same group and I just move them up as they go. So yeah, that gives me a lot of room, and I schedule for the whole PE department, the structure of the gym space and everything like that. So everything really kind of functions off this room. Just because our PE class numbers aren't as big, this class size is so large. But I think the biggest point to that is get with your guidance, talk with them as much as possible. You know, it sounds like they understand the benefit of it. They just need to understand the benefit of the long-term athletic development and getting those kids in there. And we have a academic. Our kids have all these opportunities for honors and AP and IB programs and things like that. So that's another element that you have to kind of work through. But we have, yeah. So that's so kids don't lose GPA points and things like that. That's something we have to work around. So like we have a couple kids that are really good in IB and honors courses. So we do morning lifts and things like that help those kids out. Strength is going to be the foundation in which our athletic performance is built. It allows us to generate force, protect our joints. So I said I was going to kind of get away from football, still keep the specific example in mind, but like football box players, they'll push against each other a lot. So isometric strength. Wrestlers, their isometric strength pretty much the entire match. A defensive player in lacrosse, a post player in basketball, strength. They need to have base strength, foundational strength, where they can push against another person, another human, and allows them not to get pushed around. So if they have a good base through their feet, good base through their strength, then they'll have a better chance of being successful. Power is the expression of strength through speed, and I preach to our kids a lot that I want. If the load is not heavy, they need to produce as much speed as possible. If the load is heavy, they need to produce as much speed as possible. They need to exert as much power and force onto the bar, the tsunami bar, the sticks, the med balls, whatever it is. They need to exert as much force as possible on that implement to create that power. So we know that power is work over time, force, mass times acceleration. So I talk to the kids all the time about mass times acceleration. If we can take 225 pounds, we don't have any VBT stuff, but if we can take 225 pounds and we move it faster than our opponent, then obviously we should be able to produce more force. And the nice thing about, I'll talk about our tsunami bars in a little bit, but our tsunami bars, the more the bar flexes, the kids will feel it, and they can feel the force that's being generated, and they get an automatic feedback loop right away. So if the bar is not bending, then they know that they're not producing enough force. So we always talk about force through the tsunami bar, and those are easy implements that I've kind of put into place. We throw med balls almost every day, so generating force through med ball throws and rotational power is something that we do a lot. Sprinting, jumping. So power to me is something that is easy for us, easy for the kids to understand. So every kid has sprinted in a sport. Every kid hopefully has thrown something in their life or jumped. So they understand what maximum effort is, maximum force is for that. So when we put kids on a treadmill and they sprint as hard as they can, they understand that they're producing power and putting force into the ground. Also, when they're throwing a med ball, they can understand that they throw a 6-pound med ball into the wall much faster than they throw 14. So we tell them always to try to grab a smaller weight, throw it as hard as they can, and generate power. And then back to the tsunami bars, the more that the bar flexes, the kids will feel it almost immediately. Speed refers to the ability to move rapidly across the ground or complete movements quickly. I always tell the kids speed kills. Speed kills. If we can get to an object quicker, and everybody knows that, then my opponent, then your chances of being successful are going to go way through the roof. So we preach speed a lot. Agility, just the ability to change directions. 99% of the kids that I have in here, we have to train agility all the time. Just the kids that we have here at Lexington, we have got to train speed and agility almost every day. I have golfers in here. They may do some additional stretching while everybody does their speed and agility stuff, just because they don't need that, and they're kind of like baby deer, and I don't really need them getting hurt for that. And then endurance, like I said, depending on the time of year, endurance, we may do repeat sprint ability. We may do just GPP, like 2-minute run, 1-minute walk. It just kind of depends on the year and the energy bouts and the sport itself when it comes to endurance training.
My name's Nick Cornell. I'm at Campo Verde High School, and I'm the physical education department chair and strength and conditioning coach. I'd been searching for years. I had looked at other organizations and just never found what I wanted. Never found the support, the collegiality. I just never found what I was looking for at the high school level. So summer of 2018, Brad St. Louis, another strength coach in our area, had mentioned the NHS SCA and that NatCon was coming up, and recommended that I go with him. So I went down with him to Indianapolis and was completely blown away by the support, by how many great high school strength coaches there were that were passionate, that were humble, that didn't have egos. It was about helping kids at that level that I'm at. Working with 14-year-old kids that can't lift up a bar, and having the higher level kids too. So I went back to campus after that summer, and I was just completely fueled. I had a different perspective. I drew strength from everyone I met. I met great friends. I keep in touch with so many people across the country in the organization that I just at any time can reach out to, ask questions, learn. It's just been phenomenal for me. It's strengthened my career. I've gotten a lot better at what I do. I'm more patient with kids. I understand all the difficulties that I face, everyone else faces, and we work through them together. So it's been a game changer for me, and I truly thankful to the organization, all the members, and have grown so much through this organization. Yeah, the biggest thing is I feel like the NHS SCA, number one, they're genuine. Really, the ego part is gone. That was one thing that I felt like with a lot of other organizations. When I went to other conferences, it was about prestige. It was about positions. It was about state champions. It was about all these other things that didn't apply to me. Very, very overly sciencey and really, just really hitting on things that weren't helping me where I was at. And I think the main thing is the support that I've gotten through our organization, through the NHSSCA. It's been just amazing, because at any time I can reach out, and I have the ability at any time to get numerous people's opinions and feedback on any question I have, ranging from speed agility training to testing to programming to anything. So it's enabled me, number one, to have a lot of good friends. My friendships have grown, but it's also enabled me to, again, take comfort in knowing I'm not alone, that my struggles are a lot of people's struggles, and I'm blown away by the humility that some of these truly amazing, top-notch coaches throughout the country that they want to help. They're here to help. They're here to, whether you're a young guy, and I was a guy at that point, year 25, and those guys reached down and helped me out a ton on things that I was struggling with. And so it's just been phenomenal. And 29 years of doing this, I just wish I had this organization earlier in my career. And I try to tell everyone I can, you're sorely mistaken if you don't join it. If you're a high school strength coach, you have to be a part of this organization. It's just a game changer in so many different areas, from networking to friendships to support to strength when you need it, when you're having a bad day. It's just been truly amazing.
Strength training and exercise selection. We squat, we press, we hinge, we pull. Unilateral strength. Whether it's vertical, whether it's horizontal, whether it's unilateral leg-wise, DBs, kettlebells, barbells. Essentially, I take my squat, my press, my hinge, and my pulls, and then I make them all unilateral, and then I make them all dumbbell-based or kettlebell-based or tsunami bar-based. So I take those 4 key movements, and then I just break them all the way down. I make them kind of as simple or complex as I can, just based off those 4. Power training: clean, snatch, jerk, sprints, throws, jumps. Same thing. If I have the ability to make it unilateral, I'll make it unilateral, using the dumbbell, using the kettlebell, barbell. So barbell cleans, we do dumbbell cleans, which is what I call it. We just get them, get the kids, if we can get them in the motion of what a clean would look like or feel like with a barbell. Dumbbell cleans that way. Kettlebell cleans, dumbbell snatches, jerks, single arm jerks. I mean, you name it, we're doing it. Speed training, sprints, different types of sprints. One of my slides in here, I'll talk about using our Dasher timing system out in the hallway. 0 to 10 sprints, 10 to 20, flying 10s, things like that. The sprints on our treadmills, and I'll show you kind of how I implement those and what we do there. And then our agility, wide base crossovers, break plant separate. So Tony Villani used kind of his curriculum or template, reaction drills and deceleration drills. And then endurance training, like I said, circuits, sprint training, steady state cardio. I really don't like steady state cardio for athletics very much, unless it's a specific, like, immediate off-season stuff. But our kids need to sprint. They need to sprint a lot. When it comes to strength training foundations, like I said, strength serves as our foundational pillar. Increasing our strength is going to improve our overall athletic performance, which will help us generate more power, enhance our speed, boost our endurance, and our muscle efficiency. And like I mentioned before, injury reduction is like my number one thing, especially with the amount of kids we have in here. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of kids running around. We got to make sure, one, everybody stays safe, but we're training to reduce our injuries. So injury reduction, balancing out agonist and antagonist muscle groups. So if we do too many presses or quadricep exercises and we don't balance it out with hamstring curls, glute hams, RDLs, things like that, then we're in a recipe for disaster for ACL tears, ligament damage, things like that to our knees. Same thing with our shoulders. If we're not pulling stuff, so I always try to do a ratio of 1 to 2. So if I press once, I'm pulling twice. If I have the ability to do it, I'm going to press once, pull 3 times. I'm going to try to pull and work on the posterior chain stuff as much as possible. Stronger athletes have the ability to create more power, more force, which they should run faster, jump higher, hit harder, press harder, all that different stuff. So a good base of strength, like I mentioned earlier. Squats, hinges, presses. So like I explained earlier, back squat is my overall goal. Deadlift, trap bar deadlift, kind of we bounce back and forth between those as far as our hinge. Presses, bench press, and then pulls, our barbell rows, pull-ups, chin-ups, things like that. But I work backwards from back squat. So we back squat. Before that, we'll front squat. Before that, we'll goblet squat. And then, like I said, if I can make them all single leg, I will. And then I'll change wherever their foot placement is. So if we do a split squat, I may elevate their front foot. We may put their foot on slant boards. I bought slant boards this past year. We'll put their foot on slant boards at the NHSSCA in Chicago. Cal Dietz talked about floating heels, so we did a little bit of floating heel stuff. Rear foot elevated, dumbbells, hinging, same thing. If I can make it single leg, I will. Single arm deadlifts, suitcase deadlifts, farmer carries, add tempos. We do a 4-week cycle of eccentric work. We do a 4-week cycle of isometric work with these 4 main movements, depending on the day, and it will completely change your kid's thought process on how a lift goes. If you take a squat, and this is a good way to control it as well, just add a tempo to it, and then you can watch the whole group at the same time. And if it's a 7-second down, 6-second down, whatever it is, you can make a lift very, very complicated, intensity-wise, just based off the tempo. Presses, overhead press, dumbbell overhead press, single arm bench press, alternating, if you can get those as well. So my biggest thing is taking my 4 main movements, and just adding variations to them, making them single leg, making them unilateral, getting the kids to learn, if we're doing unilateral presses, learn how to brace their core against some sort of external force. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, solely strength, power development, minimal speed and agility stuff. And I did it this semester. This is the first semester I've done it, but I'll talk about it in a little bit. But I took Tony Villani's stuff. I took Tony Holler's stuff. So the feed the cats kind of approach, and Tony V's approach of wide base crossover, change direction. And I laid them all out in a list. And then we take 2 of those exercise movements or speed and agility movements each day, and we do them prior to our lift, so that our kids get those touches every single day. Because on the Tuesday, Thursday, with the sport class, with the amount of kids we have in here, they may go to their sport coach, and I'll give them that kind of curriculum that I've created. And some of them do it, some of them don't. And I found out that the ones who don't, we have more issues with. So I try to get it in here before we lift. So we may come in, we do a dynamic flex. We do about 5 to 8 minutes of speed and agility stuff. Then they do any sort of complex movement to warm up, and then we're off to our lift. Tuesday, Thursday, if they stay with me, or if the sport coach follows it and follows the curriculum well, when they split off and I'm in here with the other group, we'll do our speed and agility stuff. And then if we have time, if they don't do their sport thing, we'll do body weight or gymnastic strength, which I got from Ethan Reeves back when I was at Gardner-Webb, and I've done that, and it's worked really well, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. I work off of the system with Johnny Parker as far as total reps go in a month, and based off how you break it down. I start with 880 total reps, and then there's a percentage break off of each one, and then we add 10% volume each week, and relative intensities we float between 70 to 85% almost the whole time. So I've done a mix of like Joe Can's tier system, Johnny Parker's. I think I've kind of merged both of them together and kind of created my own system here for as many athletes as we have rolling through in a block period. So power development, we talked about high speed, sprinting, jumping, throwing, and then the tsunami bars, getting the kids the immediate feedback of like how much the bar is bending. And the nice part about the tsunami bar is we can put just a set weight on there. The kids don't need to add weight, take weight off, things like that. They just have the weight on the bar, and they know if it's bending enough that it's producing enough force. So the tsunami bar, the speed bars that we have, 3 to 5 times the amount of weight that's actually on there. If they get it to bend enough, they'll receive that impulse at some point. So I've talked with Coach Armstrong a lot, Coach Ab a lot about the tsunami bar, the multi-sticks that we've got recently, and getting the kids just to understand how to produce force to an implement. And like I said, we use them daily with the kids, whether we're using the speed bar or the multi-sticks. So the main difference for my thought process, strength, the ability to exert force, power is the ability to exert force quickly. So we don't want weightlifters. Some of our kids go out and they lift at Dynamic Gym across the street. Some kids ask me what we can do outside of here, which is great. And I try to develop the relationship for those kids that want to go lift extra or think they need to lift extra. And I might kind of teeter their program a little bit to match what we do in here so that they're not doing too much out there. But we don't want weightlifters. I don't want slow movers. I want fast movers. One thing that's kind of stuck with me for a while, I was a strength coach one time said, "Do you want bullets or boulders?" And we want bullets. We want bullets flying around on the field in the court. So we've kind of talked about power development based off of just the percentages. Our clean snatch, our jerk can determine what our power output is going to be. For our younger kids, because our class sizes, I have 9th grade through 12th grade in the class. And as we go through, obviously my 12th graders are more experienced than my 9th graders. So percentage-wise, they can move more weight on a clean and a snatch and jerk. But everybody here on box jumps, broad jumps, med ball throw, sprints, as long as they're exerting as much force as they can with great technique, then they're getting a return from that. And we'll coach them up on clean technique, snatch technique, jerk technique. We don't do a whole lot of barbell snatches. We do a lot more dumbbell snatches, but we'll do snatch complexes and things like that with the barbell, lighter weights, just so they understand those movements. And I like to prep like our seniors, if they're going to go play at the next level somewhere, if their strength coach ever does snatch, that they at least have touched it at some point and they know what they're doing. Speed and agility. So I talked about the 5 to 8 minute segment of speed and agility that we do. I want quality over quantity. So we have 4 different stations that we set up either in the hallway or throughout the weight room here. And the 2 to 4 reps that they may get has got to be just perfect quality. I don't want them going through and creating this just repetitive over and over and over sloppy technique. If they're doing any sort of break plant separate, wide base crossover, change direction thing, I don't want it sloppy. It's got to be really good quality and form. Sprint technique. So in our warm up, in those speed and agility stations, we may do things like wall runs, single switches, double switches, triple switches, things like that. Acceleration. We might work on acceleration starts, 1 knee down, both knee down, push-up position, things like that. And then decelerations, we have our ladders that we work on, our set-out cones, and we work on 3-step stops, things like that. Just being able to start and stop, accelerate, decelerate as we go. Sled pushes, I put that in as an example. We don't use sleds. I just don't have the space for it. but we do resisted band sprints for that 5 to 8 minute section. So we may go out in the hallway. They get a partner with our bands. I know acceleration sprint that way against some sort of external resistance. Lateral movements, change direction, reaction times. So in our spots up front, we'll set up our cones and, shuffle steps, break plan at a 45, at 90 degrees, at 135 degrees, pivot off of that same direction. So we may set up something where they are moving laterally, they're sprinting forward. As long as they can break back at 180 degrees, 45 degrees, 90 degrees, 135, accelerate straight ahead, they've worked every angle that they can hit in a sport. Working off both feet, working off pivoting and rotating, getting them to understand all of those different spots, getting them to understand their foot placement when they do break and change directions. And like I said, if we can get 2 to 4 touches every single day for the course of 18 weeks, then we're making steps forward. Sprints. So like I said, out in the hallway, and I'll show you, it's on my door here, but sprints, we'll use the fly, the dasher timing system out in the hallway. So we'll set up 0 to 10, we'll set up 10 to 20, 20 to 30, different 10-minute chunks or 10-yard chunks of our sprint times. And I keep all of that stuff in our Rat Coach, which is our system that we use. But Rat Coach, that we go off of that, and the kids create their own little profile, and they can see their time over, or their progress over time. Wide base crossovers and break plant separate. Like I said, the 4 stations up there, and when we're done, I can show you kind of some of the ones that we do from there. So complementing them together. So I talked about some of our sport coaches don't do all of the sprint training, speed training stuff. So when we squat, when we deadlift, when we clean, I may pair it up with a sprint, whether it's a full out top end sprint, or if it's an acceleration, like how much miles per hour can we generate in 3 steps, plyometrics, box jumps, different box jumps variations. So deadlift to box jump variations, split squats or lunges to a sprint variation, squats to a broad jump variation, squats, deadlifts paired with tsunami bar exercises. So if we back squat, we may tsunami bar jump or tsunami bar split jump. So we get a strength movement with a power movement. We pair them together so that the kids understand that specific movement and then how it generates the power and how it generates the speed. So if we do a lunge, we come back here and we sprint on the treadmill, like the correlation between the two, right? The kids start to figure out, all right, so I have my strength through this unilateral movement. Then I come back here in the treadmills, we sprint, or if we do a unilateral movement, we go out in the hallway and we sprint time on the hallway. They start to correlate and match those two things in their head. Endurance training, a good resource that I always kind of refer back to is Joel Jameson, that the 8 weeks out. He's really good as far as endurance training. So that's a good one that you can look into. And the different kind of power endurance training or interval trainings, things like that, cardiovascular endurance, muscle endurance, isometric. The biggest thing with endurance training is isometric times that we focus on. So we may hold if we have a minute, they may hold the split squat for a minute. They may hold, a certain push-up position, hold for a minute. Just get them, especially for like our wrestlers, our box players. In the first slide when I mentioned like defensive lacrosse players, if they can hold a specific position for time, then that is training the muscle, kind of the span of all of the muscle fibers, training that for muscular endurance for that specific sport. Football, endurance training, like I said, very small time, steady state, but other than that, we're running some sort of interval sprints, 1 to 4 rest ratio, cross country. I only work specifically with them with lifts. I don't do any of their endurance training stuff. That's all their cross country coach. But, long distance stuff, cross country and football are obviously going to look very different. Cross country, basketball, soccer are going to look very different. When I was at Gardner Webb, when I worked with their soccer teams, I was pretty much in charge of everything other than their skill work. And we did a lot of just recovery jogging in between as far as any of their game stuff or their sprint work that they did. So if they did interval sprinting instead of just standing around, they may recovery jogged, a lap or two around the track or something like that. But just based off of your sport demand or their sport demand, what you need, talk with your sport coach, talk with that group specifically, and figure out how you can help improve their endurance training. So if you can improve their aerobic capacity, then their ability to recover between intervals will be much better. And that's a lot of stuff I learned from Joel Jameson through the 8 weeks out. Tempo runs, interval training, circuit training are all different options that he dives into a lot. Interval training is probably one that I sit around a little bit more versus tempo runs or circuit training, but these two kind of go hand in hand with first block as far as wrestlers go. Intervals and circuit training. Tabata training, everybody's probably heard of Tabata training, different things like that. So a sample week of kind of how it looks for us. On Monday, our main movement is going to be a clean variation paired with the sprint. So whether we start with clean complexes and work up hang cleans to power cleans, we'll pair it with the sprint, and we'll stay in between the 70 to 85%. A pull variation, so some sort of deadlift pull, hinge movement paired with the jump, whether it's a horizontal jump or a vertical jump. And then we clean up stuff technique-wise with the clean, and then lower body unilateral, tsunami bar, and posterior chain. Wednesday, we go to press. And if we're in season with that team, they'll work out twice a week. So we always go with a Monday, Wednesday setup, whether it's actually on Monday and Wednesday or if they lift on a Tuesday, Thursday, based off of how we split the classes, they'll do the clean day and the press day. Press variation with the med ball throw, upper body pull with the tsunami press, and then the 4 exercise rotation at the end to just gain some volume there. And then Friday we'll squat, sprint, snatch variation, jump variation, clean variation. So all those variations we just plug in. So I understand that I want to get to back squat as my final goal. Work down front squat, goblet squat, split squats, dumbbell split squats, lunges, things like that. So I know that that's my template, that what I want to do. And then I just kind of plug and play from my exercise list. Tuesday and Thursday, if my off-season group goes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then they'll do the 18-week curriculum blend between Tony V with break plant separate, and then feed the cats, and they'll do their Ethan Reeves gymnastic strength. And so what that is we take 10 minutes, and they'll do a pull-up, a push-up, and then depending on the sport, they'll do some sort of unilateral lunge. Wrestlers, we jump rope, but they'll do 1 pull-up, 1 push-up within a minute, and then the remaining time they'll plank, they'll jump rope, they'll do a lunge, and then so they'll do that twice a week. The next week we go to 2, we just add a rep every single week. We keep the same time frame, 10-minute segment. So the whole workout there at the end takes 10 minutes, and they do 10 sets of 1 for the first week, 10 sets of 2, 10 sets of 3, 10 sets of 4, 10 sets of 5. And then when we get to a point where they can't make it anymore in the minute, I take away the plank or the jump rope or whatever it is, and we still work on the pull-ups, push-ups. And then we try to get all the way up to 10 sets of 10. And they get 10 sets of 10 of pull-ups and push-ups in 10 minutes. So they get 100 reps. And if they can't get it, then I take away the press. We just do the pull-up portion. I did that at Gardner Webb with our wrestlers. I do that repeatedly with our wrestlers here. And they'll actually get to the point where they do they'll throw 2 chains on their neck. And they start off with 10 sets of 1. They're extremely bored with the remaining rest time that there is. But if they're adding 40 pounds on their back, and then over the course of 10 weeks, if they're doing 10 sets of 10 with 40 pounds on their back, then you can't tell me they're not going to get stronger. So any questions on the sample week? And like I said, depending on the class size, would be the ideal world. But if we have to, we flip days. So like it would almost be like an A day, a B day, if we had to. But if I can, based on the class sizes and the groups, this Friday ends up being a larger day, but that Monday, Wednesday is when my in-season group goes, and then they leave on a Friday. I'm sorry, so this is a little more open as far as the size of kids in here, the number of kids in here. All right, so formative assessments, using the word formative assessments. Our summative assessments is basically every 4 weeks. The kids come, they dress out, they participate, they lift. But our formative assessments, this is based off of just our spring semester. So I leave this the same, but we have a body scan, in-body scan in our athletic training room. So our kids step on that week 1. And then week 2, I do the 4 jump RSI off of the jump mats. And we record that in Rat Coach. Week 3, we do a 0 to 10 fly. And this is based off of, so like if we went back to here, and let's say we're doing the 0 to 10 fly that week, we do our clean variation. The kids will go out the back hall, they get in the line, and they run their time. And then there's a TV at the end of the hall that shows their time when they run through. And then they just tell us what their best, like one of the coaches will stand out there, or I'll stand out there, and they tell us what their best time is as we go, and we log it into Rat Coach. If it's a jump, so let's say it's vertical jump, then when we get to like our jump variation, whether it's on Friday or whether it's on Monday, depending on the day, but I try to get everybody to do their pull variation first. So if they do a trap bar deadlift, then they come back and they'll do a jump mat, or they do a broad jump, and we'll measure that time just so the kids, they don't wait these like 8, 9 weeks, 10 weeks before they max out on a lift. They kind of get some sort of feedback on one of our major tests throughout the year. So 3 consecutive broad jump, we'll measure the distance there, broad jump, flying 10, the 20 to 10 in the hallway, and then we recycle it back around. So every 7 weeks, all right, the 7th week when they come, or the 8th week, I'm sorry, when they come back, every 8 weeks we just redo the cycle. And they go and they step on the body scan again, they see where they're at, measures lean muscle mass, body fat percentage, things like that. We really just try to target lean muscle mass for those kids and getting them to understand kind of what we're doing in here. We talk about nutrition, but getting them to have something to look forward to versus a max out, and at the midterm point and then at the end of the semester. So, but I keep that up here, and then I just check it off as we go. So I know when I come up to it, like when I'm planning it for that week or it's planned out for the week before, I know kind of what I need to get set up for the day, and it's set up for the group the whole day out in the hallway, or the mats stay set up out here in the back. But the kids will be able to keep in mind what they had and